The studio of The View always had a certain electricity in the air, a mixture of anticipation and barely concealed chaos. On most days, the buzz felt controlled, managed, rehearsed, familiar. But on this particular morning, even before the cameras warmed up, there was something else humming underneath the surface. Something sharp, something tense. Neither the producers rushing around nor the stage managers adjusting microphones could quite put their finger on it, but they all sensed the same thing: something unusual was going to happen. At the center of the iconic curved table sat Joy Behar, flipping through her cue cards with a pointed determination. Her lips were set in the kind of straight line that made producers silently pray for a smooth show. Joy wasn't angry, not yet, but she was keyed up, sharper than usual. Maybe it was the topic lineup. Maybe it was the audience's restless chatter. Maybe it was the looming arrival of the morning's guest, Jason Bateman, who was backstage adjusting his jacket and greeting crew members with his trademark calm charm. Jason had been on the show before, always a polite, good-humored conversationalist, never one to stir trouble. He wasn't the loud, controversial type. He didn't come with tabloid storms trailing behind him. But Joy had read his most recent interview the night before, and a particular line had burned itself into her mind. It wasn't the literal words that bothered her, it was the tone she heard behind them. Or maybe the tone she assigned to them. Either way, she didn't like it. The audience finished settling in as the countdown began. In 5, 4, 3, the theme music erupted, the lights burst alive, and the studio audience clapped with the enthusiasm of a well-coached crowd. The co-host smiled, waved, and leaned toward the camera with practiced ease. For a moment, all seemed perfectly normal. Joy delivered her first quip of the morning, earning a burst of laughter. A few news topics were discussed: politics, celebrity gossip, a viral video involving a mischievous cat. Everything flowed smoothly, even pleasantly. Jason Bateman waited patiently off stage, listening, adjusting, preparing. He was used to talk shows. He knew the rhythm, the dance, the careful balance between sincerity and entertainment. Then came the introduction. "Please welcome our guest today," one of the co-hosts announced brightly, the talented actor, director, and producer, Jason Bateman. The audience erupted into applause as Jason stepped onto the stage with a warm smile and an easy wave. He took his seat beside Joy, offering her a polite nod. She gave a small, tight smile back. "Good to see you again, Joy," Jason said. Joy replied, adjusting her glasses. A noncommittal sound, but those who knew her recognized the early crackle of friction. Jason folded his hands, ready to dive into the usual light-hearted banter about his new project. But Joy had other plans. "So, Jason," she began casually, flipping her cue card dramatically, "I was reading your interview from last week. You know, the one where you talked about how film sets are becoming overly emotional work environments." Jason's expression stiffened almost imperceptibly. He opened his mouth, but Joy kept going, reading the line out loud with extra emphasis. "People are too reactive these days." Interesting choice of words. The audience let out a small, uncertain murmur. Jason blinked, then nodded slowly. "Well," he started, "that's actually not exactly how I phrased it." Joy raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because that's what you said. It's right here." Jason exhaled softly through his nose. "Yes, the words are mine, but the context around them matters." That comment was part of a bigger discussion about improving communication on set. Joy shrugged, leaning back in her seat. "Sounds to me like you were complaining about people being too sensitive." Jason's smile thinned. "That's not what I said." "Then what did you say?" Joy asked. "Help me out." Jason nodded, attempting to keep his tone calm. "I was pointing out that as the industry evolves, emotions run high. It's not about people being too reactive, it's about navigating new expectations." Joy waved a dismissive hand. "You're splitting hairs." Jason's eyebrows lowered just a touch. "I'm explaining my own words." Joy let out a short, sharp laugh that drew another uneasy buzz from the audience. "Okay, Professor, enlighten the class." Jason looked down for a second, clearly working to keep steady. "Joy, if you let me finish a sentence, I can clarify what I meant." Joy stiffened as though struck. The words, "let me finish a sentence," hit her like a challenge. She straightened, jaw tightening, eyes sharpening behind her glasses. "Oh, don't talk to me like that," she snapped. "I'm not one of your students." Jason blinked, confused and annoyed at once. "I wasn't talking to you like that. You were," Joy insisted. You're acting like I can't read a quote. I didn't say that either, Jason replied, frustration now undeniably present. I said the quote needs context. And I say you're dodging, Joy shot back. The co-hosts shifted uneasily in their seats. One reached for her coffee mug. Another pretended to flip through notes. They all recognized the signs. Joy's voice had gained that unmistakable crispness, icy, cutting, ready to pounce. Jason leaned forward. Look, I came here to talk about the work. The interview was interpreted without all the nuance. Everything doesn't need nuance, Joy said sharply. Sometimes people just mean what they say. Jason let out a quiet, incredulous laugh. So now you're deciding what I meant better than I can. Joy slapped her cue cards on the table, not violently, but with enough force to send a ripple through the studio. The audience gasped. The co-hosts froze. Even Jason sat back, startled. When the commercial break began, the studio of The View didn't exhale the way it usually did. Instead, it held its breath, tight, tense, waiting for something to snap. Crew members moved quickly but quietly, exchanging glances as if any loud noise might trigger another explosion. The co-hosts whispered among themselves, not daring to speak at full volume. The audience sat in a stunned murmur, half whispering, half holding their hands over their mouths in disbelief. At the center of it all, Joy Behar remained seated, stiff as a pillar, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She wasn't speaking. She wasn't moving. Her jaw was locked, and she stared ahead as though the cameras were still rolling. The crew had seen Joy irritated, annoyed, even angry before, but this silence had a different texture. It was the kind of silence that spelled danger. Beside her, Jason Bateman sat with his hands pressed together, leaning forward with a tense, measured focus. He wasn't angry anymore, not obviously, but he looked troubled, like someone trying to replay the last 10 minutes in his mind and failing to understand how it spiraled so quickly. A makeup artist stepped toward him hesitantly before backing away when he offered a polite, tight smile that said, "Not now." A producer knelt beside Joy. "We can move on," he whispered. "Let's reset. You don't have to revisit anything." Joy didn't blink. "I'm fine," she said, but her tone was flat, brittle. "Just fine." The producer didn't believe a word of it, but there wasn't time to press. "Back in 30, the floor manager announced, her voice cracking slightly as she tried to sound confident. Jason lifted his eyes toward the ceiling, taking a deep breath. He glanced at Joy once, carefully, cautiously, but she remained unreadable. "Back in 10, the stage lights brightened, chairs adjusted, cue cards reshuffled. The audience sat straighter, bracing themselves like passengers before turbulence. 5, 4, 3. The red light blinked on, and the show resumed. The lead co-host leaned into the camera with a smile that was a shade too wide, like someone trying desperately to hold the seams together. "Welcome back, everyone. We're going to shift gears and..." Joy raised her hand. The co-host fell silent, her breath catching visibly. Jason turned his head slowly toward Joy, his expression tightening again. Joy placed both hands on the table. "Before we move on," she said, voice steady but trembling with restrained emotion, "I want to address something." The audience froze. The air felt as though it crystallized around them. The director mouthed no, no, no from behind the cameras, but the moment was unstoppable. Joy looked directly at Jason. "I have been on this show for many years. I've interviewed hundreds of guests. I've had disagreements, arguments, debates. But I won't be talked down to by a guest sitting in that chair." Jason inhaled sharply. "Joy, I wasn't talking down to you. You were," she said sharply, her voice cutting like glass. "And you don't get to tell me I'm misinterpreting my own experience." "Joy," Jason said slowly, "I wasn't trying to patronize you. I just wanted to explain my own words." Joy laughed bitterly. "Explain." "Jason, you practically accused me of twisting your interview." Jason blinked hard. "Because you did twist it." The audience gasped loudly enough to echo. One co-host reached out as if to put a hand on Joy's arm but thought better of it and pulled back. Joy shook her head, eyes blazing. "This is what I deal with. A man comes on here, says something controversial, then blames me when I ask him about it." Jason straightened, his voice firmer now. "It wasn't controversial until you decided to frame it that way." Joy scoffed. "Oh, please, you said what you said. And you didn't let me finish," Jason fired back with a firmness of his own. "You kept interrupting me and then blamed me for getting frustrated." Joy's nostrils flared. "So now I'm the problem." Jason sighed. "Joy, can we just..." "No," she cut in. We can't. A hush fell so heavy it felt like a physical weight. Joy pushed back her chair with a screech that sliced through the silence. The audience gasped again. Even Jason looked startled. Joy, he said softly. Come on. She shook her head. I'm not doing this. I'm not going to sit here and be made to feel like I'm the unreasonable one because you can't handle a simple question.